G'day and welcome to the GameDay Squad Rugby League Fantasy Show. I'm Dyl, that's Stu, and we are the Fantasy Bros. You know what day it is? It is Wednesday. It is Fantasy Bros Wednesday, and we cannot wait to jump into everything Teamless Tuesday. We've obviously partnered with GameDay Squad once again to bring you everything you need to know for Rugby League GDS this season. There's some big returns and plenty of injuries to discuss, so before we jump straight into our teams, though, Stu, welcome, mate. Before we get into those previews, how did you go for round two?
Yeah, g'day, Dyl. G'day, viewers. G'day, listeners. Mate, firstly, credit where credit's due, and well done to your boys, obviously the Warriors, for their demolition of the Raiders. That was pretty disappointing from the men in green. Fortunately, though, you don't really win a premiership in March, so hopefully the Green Machine can turn things around nice and quickly because they are not looking too good at the moment. Yeah, after a disappointing round one in terms of my GDS results, a much better round two for me. My best finishes were both 11th in Champ and 12th in Challenger, so much closer to where I want to be, just a little bit outside that top 10 and some pretty nice packs to boot for finishing 11th and 12th. How did you go?
Yeah, mate, look, Saturday I was looking real pretty. I think I was first in the under-24s competition.
Yeah.
Leading into that Sunday game, I was looking pretty good in Challenger, but obviously quite a few loaded up on a few of those Sunday players, including obviously the Dolphins that started pretty slow and then ran over the top of the Titans to finish strong there. So a lot of those Dolphins boys obviously helped out. A few coaches. I finished 17th in Challenger. So that's pushed me up into 9th spot overall for Challenger. So although that's my pod team, it's fast becoming my main focus now. And I talked about on the Sunday Showdown having to make some decisions about whether I keep players in the Challenger side or move some champion blokes down to the Challenger. And it's quite difficult when you start going well on your pod side. You're not sure whether to keep those pods going or mix it up a bit. But obviously, a couple of our boys that we talked about last week on the show really saluted for us, one of them being Adam Dewey and then the other being Iongi. So they helped us out a lot last week, and hopefully we can find some more today.
Absolutely. We've got Tracy with us in the chat. G'day, Tracy, once again. Thanks for joining us. And Luke Skipper, thanks again for joining us, buddy, becoming a bit of a regular in season 2026. Great to see you. Just a reminder to everyone that we'll be coming live to you every Wednesday night at the new time of 6 p.m. to go through everything Rugby League Game Day Squad related. And we'll also be coming to you live every Sunday afternoon. Some of you have already joined us there for the Sunday Showdown competition. We'd love to have a few more of you hang out with us, a little bit more casual, bit laid back, watch some of the footy through the first half and cheer on some of the players we've got in that Sunday Showdown team. We've already got two teams that have saluted that have won round one and round two and have already got their ticket into the finals for their shot at $5,000. Make sure you join us Sunday so that you can see some of our tips and who we are going to start in our Sunday team. Our weekly Wednesday shows, as always, we'll be previewing who we think are the best plays across each of the positions. We're going to structure things slightly differently now. We're going to talk about some of the strongly considered players. We're going to talk about some points of difference, and while we might not go into too much depth about all players, we're also going to have on screen some of the players that we're looking to stay away from for various reasons. So if there's anyone on the screen during those positional previews that you're quite interested in or wondering why we have them as a fade or a pod or a must start, let us know in the comments section. We've got Shawnee Walcott there as well. G'day, mate. Thanks for joining us once again. Maybe it's the earlier time deal that the 6 o'clock start. We've got, I know that skips, I think, over the ditch. So maybe that the 6 p.m. start is a bit better for some of these guys to join us. But we love to see it. During the Wednesday night show, we'll also touch on our key players for the under-24 competition. We'll plug the Stats Lab primetime competition. And, of course, our very own Fantasy Bros Sunday Showdown. There's also a chance for the viewers to win plenty of cards in the BroDown ShowDown segment. So stay tuned for that at the end of tonight's show. And finally, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to us across all of our socials. Please, it really helps us out a lot. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. So make sure you drop a like and a follow on all of those social platforms. You just need to search at Fantasy Bros AU. We've got plenty of content, as well as pack and card giveaways throughout the season. We'll drop them on our Instagram and a few of our other pages every now and then. We've also got some pretty cool merch on our website, so it'd be great to get some people roaming the streets, both in Australia, New Zealand, and abroad in some Fantasy Bros gear. Wouldn't that be awesome? Just head over to the website. That's www.fantasybrosau.com.
Yeah, definitely. And as always, it's never too late to get involved with GameDay Squad. We talk about it each and every week. It's probably the best part about this fantasy platform compared to all others is that you can join it at any point in the season and you can go straight into the chance to win up to $5,000 in cash each and every week just for playing along and having some fun. And the favorite part for us, obviously, is ripping those packs. We love ripping footy cards in real life, and this just helps that out a lot as well. So if you haven't already, make sure you jump onto the GameDay Squad website or download the app. Use the promo code FBRL26 and you'll be rewarded with 3 9-player common packs just for doing so. Plus, there's a whole lot of bronze cards that you're going to get as well through that. There's going to be a whole lot of packs to get you started there. I know there's a bit of a checklist that you work through, and each time you tick off one of those, you get rewarded with packs, and it really starts your team strong. And I know a few of our mates started this year, and straight away they've already qualified for that Classic Cup that we're going to talk about in a moment. So it's really easy to get involved. Just make sure you use that promo code FBRL26 again, and that'll get you that 3 9-player common pack to get you started. So why not sign up now? Plenty of opportunity to collect, coach, and compete against some of the best fantasy coaches around. And then, obviously, as I said, talking about that Classic Cup, we've got round 1. I actually, to be honest, I've been so focused on the 6 competitions, I completely forgot that we've got this unreal head-to-head single elimination competition where you can win an opportunity to get a prize card at the end of the season as well. It's absolutely unreal. So this round 1 starts this weekend. We've got Stu, you're up against Hampton Wedge Tails, and then I'm up against the Golf Fingers. And it's really easy to get involved. If you haven't seen the Classic Cup before, super simple. Set your classic team, and that is all. That's all you need to do. Just like normal, create your team. All the boys at GDS do the rest, and you can win some unreal prizes. As you work through the rounds, the prizes obviously get better as well. I know there's some all-stars in there, a few additional packs. So make sure you get involved. That's going to be a heap of fun, and we'll keep you up to date how we're going with our teams in the Classic Cup over the next few weeks.
And hopefully I can hang around in the competition for a little bit longer this year. Some of you will remember my very early round 1 exit, and I think I only went one better in the second half of the competition as well. So definitely looking to go a lot further. But Hampton Wedgetails, we've seen him on the leaderboard quite a lot. I think he came second by 0.08 in the Stats Lab Primetime competition in round 2. So I've definitely got my hands full this round. Haven't seen too much of the Goldfingers, but if you're out and about the Goldfingers, let us know and see if you can knock over Dyl in round 1.
Yeah, plenty of opportunity to do so. And I think it was Walkie that got over the top of Hampton Wedgetails by that decimal.
It was, Congrats, mate. Well done.
Congrats to Walkies. Alrighty, let's jump into our analysis for this week. And look, as Stu mentioned at the top of the show, we are going to do something a little bit different. On the screen, you'll see that we've got 3 players that we're strongly considering, 2 points of difference that we might touch on, and then 2 players that we are really keen to stay away from. So if you're not on screen, if you're not watching live, or you're not watching on YouTube a little bit later, but listening through Spotify or Apple Music, our strongly considers this week are Harry Grant, Blake Brayley, and Damien Cook, even though little has been named. So talk us through why, Stu, you think still Damien Cook might be one of those players that you still strongly consider.
Yeah, well, you've got to consider him because he has played the 2 80-minute matches. He's averaging 72 or very close to 80 minutes. Actually had to leave the field early for a HIA, I believe. But averaging 72 across those 2 matches with a massive score over there in Vegas. Yeah, the big question mark, the big contention there is obviously Jacob Little in the number 14 jersey. Are the days of Damien Cook at 80 minutes over? Not necessarily. There is every likelihood that they do share the field together. We saw that on a number of occasions last season, and Jacob Little coming onto the field early was really beneficial for their attack and allowed Cookie to play a bit of a roaming, bit of a running sort of number 13, and he still got through a really similar amount of work in terms of tackles. So he's still a consideration just because other than Harry Grant and Blake Brayley, there aren't too many really good options that I'd want to go for. And if you're not too sure about the Harry Grant matchup with the Bronx or Blake Brayley, if you're not happy with his 50-odd points through 55 tackles, and you want some upside because you saw Damien Cook's monster out in Vegas, it could be a decent pod. We could still see 70 or 80 minutes. For me, it just it's just going to be how that combination with Jacob Liddle turns out. I think I'm going to wait and see how that dual hooker role shakes out there at the Dragons. And I'm sorry to the Harry Grant players, but I'm going to jump on him this week. I haven't played him all season. He scored 3 tries in those 2 matches for scores of 72 and 68. So my apologies if Harry Grant has a bit of a shocker or doesn't find the try line there against the Bronx. Really interested to see what happens there at the Dragons. There could be a world where both Damien Cook and Jacob Liddle are GDS relevant. We did see it last season. I just want to wait and see.
Yeah, the Harry Grant one's an interesting one. The Broncos obviously been pretty good against hookers at the moment through their first 2 games. Small sample size, obviously, but only allowing 29 GDS points to the 2 hookers that they've faced, an average of 29 GDS points. But Harry Grant's obviously better than Mitch Kenny and Talon De Silva and Riley Smith, etc. That have played there in that hooker role. So, yeah, there's plenty of upside for Harry Grant. It's just one of those classic fantasy things where he's playing well and then you go and play him and break him for everyone else who's been enjoying the ride. So I think I'm going to stick with Blake Brayley. They've obviously got a bit of a softer matchup in terms of who they're up against. But, look, in terms of the pods, we've got a couple of pods there on screen. Reece Robson finally comes back into the Rooster side, and that could definitely be an opportunity for some coaches who want to get ahead of the game. A little bit like I think maybe Adam Dewey's your call on Adam Dewey last week, wanting to get ahead of the game there. So Reece Robson's probably an interesting one to see and how he goes. The other one there is Bailey Hayward, but you're pretty keen on Reece Robson, or is that someone that, again, you're just going to look at and maybe see what his minutes shape out based on Watson still having that number 14 jersey?
Yeah, not super keen. More so just interested to see what does play out there. And if his move to the Roosters does ignite his fantasy scoring, he could be a guy that we are talking about in this position in the weeks to come. But definitely want to be able to see it first. We know that he got close to the 80 minutes year in, year out at the Cowboys, but didn't regularly do too much with it other than the decent tackle numbers and a bit of nice base through his running game as well. The expectation is that still 80 minutes at the Roosters would see him maybe jag a few more attacking stats, given, likely in a better attacking team with, Teddy roaming through the middle and some really creative ball players on both sides of the field. So it's probably just the role and the minutes will be a big watch this round. I think Connor Watson is way too good to be playing, 20 or 30 minutes like we saw in round 1. He obviously got a bit more minutes in round 2, but I think Trent Robertson is still trying to work out how he's going to be using all of those boys. And if they can find a way to get Robson and Watson on the park for plenty of minutes, I think they'll be even more dangerous. So no reason to rush into Robson. If you want to get ahead of the pack and maybe hope that he has a big score in his first game back, then that's why we've got him listed as a pod. Like you said, a bit like Adam Dewey, those players coming back for their very first game, not many coaches are going to play them. They're not high on the averages list, obviously, and they might be forgotten about. So, yeah, if you want a bit of a flyer or you don't own a Harry Grant, Blake Brayley type card, he wouldn't be the worst shout, I imagine.
Yeah, and look, the stats sort of point to him potentially having a decent game as well up against the Panthers. Obviously, it seems tougher on paper, but they're still allowing sort of 33 GDS points to hookers. So there's still an opportunity there. One player that I'm definitely staying away from is the man on screen there, Tommy Starling. Now, you might look at that matchup between the Raiders and Bulldogs and think, and be licking your lips and think this is going to be an unreal matchup here. Damien Cook scored 92 points against the Doggies in round 1. But really, the difference for me is Tommy Starling. He's got Jaden Brayley looming on the bench. Owen Paddy sitting in the 19, 20-man squad, whatever they've got at the moment. So I don't think there's a big opportunity for Tommy Starling. The maximum number of minutes he's seen on the park is 65, which sort of aligns with what he was doing last year and what we sort of expected from Starling last year. But he's only averaging 0.5 points per minute. So that for me just tells me a really simple story that it's time to stay away from Tommy Starling. And look, we talk about it every week. For me, it's all about the tackles. And Starling makes plenty of tackles when he's on the park, like most hookers, but he's missing so many as well. He's running a tackle efficiency at the moment is 87% across those 2 games. That's a total of 36 GDS points that he has lost through demerits. So for me, I'm just going to stick to those blokes that we know are guaranteed the 80 minutes. They're going to rack up more tackles. Yeah, they might miss a few more because they're making a few more, but that tackle efficiency is probably going to be closer to that 90, 95% that I want to see. And for me, yeah, like a bit like what Tracy has said here, Tracy Wall in the comments, Harry set and forget this week anyway. And then, look, if we see something different from Cook and we see that the 80-minute role for Cook, whether he starts in the hooker role and goes back to lock or whatever they do there, that might be an opportunity moving forward. But yeah, Tommy Starling's a big stay away from me, as is the other man on screen in Reid Marnie.
Yeah, not much to like about what's happening in the hooker position there at the North Queensland Cowboys. I think Sif Kanga's got a pretty good option there as well in Brayley. Thanks for joining us once again, Sif. Great to see the howdy. Let's get rowdy.
Love it. Alrighty, let's jump into middle forwards. And as always, probably the two big ones is Payne Haas and Terrell May. There's obviously one player missing there, and that's Isaiah Yeo. We've kind of gone a bit cold on him at the moment. He's sort of the role that he's got and the minutes that he's got is just not conducive to those big scores that we've seen from him in the past. So while it's not he's not getting the minutes, we're probably leaving him out of our sides in terms of those middle forwards. But we're strongly considering Haas May. And then the other one there is Stefano Utoikamanu. Do you want to talk us through why you're so keen on Stefano? I've been playing him the last 2 weeks and I love what I've seen so far.
Yeah, absolutely. He got a start for me last round as well. And we spoke about it a lot in the preseason, sort of when we were previewing the Middles and the Melbourne Storm team. And his end of the 2025 season was unreal. He had a number of matches where he made a number of tackle breaks. And I think he was in double digits in one of those games as well. So when a middle forward is playing 60+ minutes with the ability to break 10+ tackles, that just puts, a really nice safe floor on what's already going to be a pretty high floor just through the natural workload that they get through in terms of tackles and run numbers. He backed up his round one score of 51 with a really nice 70-point outing against the Dragons, and that it did include 9 tackle breaks. He even saw a few more minutes than he got in round one as well. So, look, I'm not sure he'll see that many tackle breaks against a team like the Bronx, who do obviously have Haas and Carrigan in the middle, who tend to make a lot of their tackles and have a really high tackle efficiency number. So Stefano might be the guy that you want to play against some of those forward packs that might be a little bit softer through the middle or maybe run out of gas toward the end of the match where he really takes advantage of them. But the numbers that he's putting up, it's hard to look past. And like you mentioned with Isaiah Yeo, I think we want to see him consistently back to 80 minutes. The 65 up to 72 is a promising sign. And no Jack Cogger in the number 14 jersey does mean we probably expect Yeo to see those bigger minutes, given that they have enjoyed using Cogger as that sort of ball running middle forward for 10 to 15 minutes. I think Isaiah Yeo even mentioned that in his press conference at the end of last week's match in his little interview there as well. So that doesn't look like changing. But while Cogger isn't named in the team, I'm not sure Freddie Lussick is going to have that role. I guess it's probably just more of a wait and see. But when Stefano's putting up some pretty big numbers and you can roll out him, Payne Haas and Terrell May, some people might start saying, Isaiah who?
Yeah, definitely. Look, Tracy again has jumped in and said Ford has been on fire. You can see here Jackson Ford is at one of our points of difference. I'm loving what I'm seeing from Jackson Ford. 70 minutes and then 76 minutes in that Raiders game. He did get a try as well, but ended up on 78 GDS points. My only concern from a Jackson Ford point of view, if you're going to play him in the middle, is potentially the Mitch Barnett role. He's obviously named on the extended bench at the moment, coming back from that injury. If he gets named in the side, what do we think that's going to do for Jackson Ford's minutes? For me, I feel like it might detract a little bit, although maybe the coach just says, look, Ford, you've been the heart and soul of this team so far. I'm going to give you that run. And maybe it's that Aaron Clark misses out potentially, or Ford might drop back to there. So I'll probably want to see it first to know whether Mitch Barnett is going to be named. If not, then I'm a lot more keen on Jackson Ford. But if he is named, then it's really going to be a watch and wait to those minutes that Jackson Ford gets, because he gets through a lot of work when he's on the park for sure.
Absolutely. And we saw some signs last season where he had these big minute games, but then he went back to sort of 50 and 55 at times, and it wasn't really consistent. It was sort of more just matchup based. So yeah, that was 75 minutes from a middle forward. It's tough to look past that, isn't it? But obviously, yeah, a little bit of a question mark in the air there with the potential return of Mitchy Barnett. Skip's here in the chat saying he's got Cam Murray as his third, averaging about 55 GDS points, mostly through base, looking really promising. And that forward pack sort of means that he's expected to get through plenty of work. And with Talis Duncan now named on the edge, he probably means that Murray is going to see a few extra minutes there as well. So between the likes of Ford, Cam Murray, Isaiah Papali'i, on top of those 3 or 4 middle forwards that we've already mentioned, G coaches are going to have a pretty tough time this weekend trying to select their 3 starters and their 2 benchies. Maybe it's a case of we just run the 5 middles because they're looking a bit more consistent and a bit better than some of those edge players.
Yeah, potentially, because I've got another name that I'm going to throw out there, and he's not on screen, but I couldn't go a stream without talking about Jack Williams and the impact that he's had at the Eels. And look, he's been named in his 3rd position as many weeks. Round 1, he played 80 minutes on the edge. Round 2, 52 in the middle. And now he's been named at lock with Hopgood returning and taking that front row spot. They've actually dropped Jack de Belin back to the bench, which I'm quite surprised with. But I guess they're seeing a little bit more from Jackie Williams, which is fair to say. He's all base and power in terms of a GDS point of view. He's averaging 40 tackles, 100 running meters, and 2 tackle breaks. So I'm really keen to what that role sort of looks like for him at lock and whether he continues playing that 80 minutes and he doesn't get that 52. Either way, he's pretty much racking up those points through that base and power and almost that 1 point per minute type player when he is playing that 50 minutes. So you can't really complain about 55-ish points across a 55-minute time on the park. So Jack Williams is someone else I think we just need to keep an eye on. And if he can sort of keep that lock role and play big minutes, I think he's going to be, a big player moving forward for our middles.
Yeah, and even just looking at that Eels bench really quickly, obviously expect Dylan Walker to play a bit through the middle there as well. But Tuivasa, Matt Dory, Talon De Silva also named in the 14 to 17 with de Belin named at 18. I know the numbers don't always mean which 4 are going to get on the park, but it's a pretty small sort of forward rotation there. And if de Belin doesn't get chosen as one of those 4 to come off the bench, I think there's plenty of minutes available there for Jackie Williams. And maybe even Jermaine Hopgood, who had a nice 50-point outing despite a sin bin in that opening match. So, geez, we've got some middles coming out of our ears, don't we?
Oh, yeah. Look, we've got Sif Kanger. He's going with Haas May, and then he's giving Yo 1 more week. So I think he's sort of backing that strategy of potentially those minutes just increasing over time. And I think that's a pretty good option. We've relied on Yo for so long. I don't think there's any reason not to necessarily go off him yet. If we see another 60-minute effort, then I think maybe that's time to leave. 2 players that we're really keen to stay away from this week is one man we talked about all off season. We loved him, but he just hasn't shown up, and that's Toby Couchman. If anything, his brother's been the standout, and he's gone way and above what we expected from Ryan Couchman. For me, I've got no interest in Couchman at all. He's averaging 59 minutes on the park for a point per minute of 0.7. You compare that to his brother, he's averaging 56 minutes on the park. He's racking up 1 point per minute. So he's getting through a lot more work. What about Tino for you, mate? Is it just shake your head at Tino and his average of 28 GDS points?
Oh, mate, bizarre. 28 points, 47 minutes on the park. You just look at that number and you go, well, what's happening there? He's a guy that should be playing 60 to 65 minutes plus if the Gold Coast Titans are any chance of winning a football match. But 47 minutes across 2 matches and averaging 28, absolutely despicable. He might not even make the screen. He's just going to be a middle forward amongst the rest of all of the nobodies and not even a stay away because no one's even in their right mind likely to play a Tino based on what he's shown in the first 2 weeks. Look, he's too good of a footballer not to be in consideration at some point. We just need to see a lot better. Come on, Josh Hannay, what are you doing there at the Titans? You've got to get the boys moving, and Tino is the heart and soul of that side. Or are they just thinking Tino's looking at his next paycheck and moving on, so he's checked out a little bit already? Gee, I hope not.
You know, it's a nice place to go is the New Zealand shoreline of Auckland, the North Shore there. Great little place, not too busy. You get plenty of minutes on the park, Tino. So maybe hit up the boys over in New Zealand and see if you can get over there because you would be a great fit for the Warriors now that we've lost Mitchy Barnett. Alrighty, let's jump into our edges. And once again, we've got some pretty good options this week. Obviously, we didn't have Jacob Preston last week, but he's now back off after that bye. We've got Dill Lucas. And then Kai Pearce-Paul had a massive game on a debut for the Tigers. Talk to us about... Pretty much we're going to lock in, I'd say, Preston and Lucas, aren't we? And then potentially we're looking at a third option on our bench.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely Preston and Lucas. Look, Preston's combination with Lockie Galvin in round 1 over in Vegas was outstanding. He scored a beautiful try. He made 44 tackles. He didn't miss one, and he scored 75 points. The Raiders, we know, are leaking plenty of points, and look, that combination there on the right-hand side is going to cause plenty of headaches for young Ethan Sanders. He missed 4 tackles in the recent outing against the Warriors when they let in a few points. So, I expect that the Dogs go in there pretty frequently, and that combination is going to get better and better throughout the season. They're also well rested, whereas the Raiders had that extra time slog for Golden Point, and they've had a lot of travel over to New Zealand, and they had to play in some pretty poor conditions there. They had a long trip back after a big loss, so I think the Doggies will be licking their lips and ready to tear in tomorrow night. Dill Lucas has lost some attacking upside with the injury to Ponga. Sharp does return, which is probably a good thing for him. Still no tries or line breaks this season in his first 2 outings, but averaging 59 points without any of those attacking stats is absolutely fantastic. You know that they'll come eventually, whether it's through some tackle breaks, some line breaks, a try assist, or eventually a try. But the 59 points without any of that so far is fine.
And we mentioned that on the Sunday Showdown, where we didn't really talk about him at all because he wasn't really featured in any of the attacking, yet he was almost at the top of the scoreboard every time we had a look at the match stats. So he just gets through a bucket load of work and is able to rack up points quite easily. And then, bring on that attacking stat, particularly with the return of Fletcher Sharp. The Warriors are travelling, which we don't really do too well when we travel. But there are a few injuries there at the night, so we'll have to see how that shapes up. Mate, Lecker is one of our points of difference, and I talked about him as my whinge of the week on the Sunday Showdown. And look, I'm not going to make the same whinge twice. I'm not going to whinge about that again. But that's someone that's coming straight into my side because of that. The Knights have allowed an average of 56 GDS points to those right edges so far this season. That includes 2 tries. So one from Helium Lukey, who was our other point of difference, and he's ended up scoring 71 points against them. And then Homole Olakawatu crossed the line as well, and he ended up with 40 points, GDS points. The key for me, though, is both players broke a couple of tackles each during those games. So I think Lecker, very similar style of gameplay as those two. He loves to score tries. We've already seen a couple of tries from him, and he just loves to get involved and make plenty of plenty of tackles. So Lecker, I can't make the same mistake twice. He's named to play on that edge, and I'm hoping that he plays the full 80 minutes and we can see a lot from him and we get a big game. So for me, that's one of the key points of difference that I'm going to play this week. But you're pretty keen on Helium Lukey.
I am, yeah, and Sif Kang has brought up a really interesting point there. He says, he's just not sure if these guys can keep scoring tries every week, and he's spot on there. Kai Pearce-Paul, 2 tries for 61 points. He actually looks a lot more involved than 61 points when you factor in the 2 tries. But that's what happens with some of these edge forwards that don't necessarily have the same amount of base as, say, a Dylan Lucas, that we do want these guys to score a try. But look, Helium Lukey is getting through plenty of base as it is, and if he's ever going to score a try or even score 2 tries in a match, it's probably this one. They're at home against the Gold Coast Titans, who, can score points on their day, but can also let in plenty of points as well. And Helium Lukey's getting through plenty of work defensively. Tackles in the 40, 43 and 48, I think, in the first 2 rounds. He did miss 3 tackles in both matches, but made up for that with 3 tackle breaks in both matches as well. So sort of cancels out those missed tackles. You sort of want a bit of a positive in terms of tackle breaks versus missed tackles. But when he's getting through 90 run meters, 43 tackles, and some nice attacking upside outside of Tommy Dearden in a pretty favourable matchup, I think if you're ever looking for an edge back rower to score a try, it might be this week against the Gold Coast Titans. So that's why I've got Lukey just ahead of some of those other edge back rowers. But look, it's a bit of a lottery. You find the guy that's going to score a try. For me, it's Helium Lukey plus the base that he'll get through.
Yeah, and look, we've got, where are we here? Daniel Lenteni. So excuse me if I got that wrong. It sounds like you are new to the pod, so it's unreal. Welcome, Daniel. Look, Noah Martin, your bloke there over at the Raiders. We talked about Matty Nicholson and potentially what a big role he might have. Obviously, Matty Nicholson's still dealing with a few injuries, and Noah Martin is just going from strength to strength. Do we see that happening each and every week, that combination with Ethan Strange and how advantageous it is? We've already seen some big scores from Noah Martin already in terms of that first game, 82 points against the Seagulls, and then even 58 against the Warriors in a losing game. Is Noah Martin someone that is sort of on the fringe for you, or is it someone that you're potentially holding off with because you've got a bit of a bias towards the Raiders wanting to do well. You don't want to play them in your side necessarily.
Yeah, it's really interesting situation, isn't it? He's sort of come from the clouds a little bit. The Matty Nicholson injury has murkied the waters even further. But look, 48 and 51 tackles in back-to-back matches is unreal. So obviously Sticky likes his defensive output. We've just seen an edge-back rower in Semi Sasangi play in the centre position once again with Matty Timoko. Look, he's a New Zealand international. He's a pretty good footballer. He's played in that Canberra Raiders team for a long, long time. That's the situation that's just really confusing at the moment. At any point in time, whether it's, one Noah Martin missed tackle or, one bad error from Simi Sasangi, and we could see, some completely different rotations being used. And it could mean that rather than Timoko playing in the middle for a random 10 minutes, which added absolutely nothing to the team, maybe he moves into that centre position and Sasangi either goes to the bench or even starts in that edge back role position. But look, if Timoko does start, which you probably do expect, he probably is a better centre than Sasangi, let's be honest, then where do you use Sasangi? He's obviously played some really good football over the past season or two, and Sticky wants to reward that. The only position really that fits in for him other than an injury during the game would be that Noah Martin position. So I don't know. I just think it might happen at some point. But if Noah Martin keeps getting his 80 minutes and keeps getting plenty of points and shoring up the Raiders' defence, then I've got something a little to cheer about. I just think I might look for a bit of upside elsewhere and let that Raiders rotation just play out a bit more.
And I guess because Noah Martin has been making waves for the Raiders and that connection with Ethan Strange on that right side, it means that Huddo Young has quickly become a player that we're starting to stay away from. As you can see on screen there, an average of 44 GDS points from a player that was, averaging close to 60 pretty much the whole of last season, to the point where I think there was 3 games in a row when he had double tries, and we're sort of talking about him as going to be one of the top try scorers for the season. Is it the effect that we're seeing that Ethan Strange has moved to the other side, or is there something else that's not quite clicking between Young and Sanders potentially?
Yeah, I think a bit of column A, a bit of column B. Obviously, Jamal Fogarty isn't there sort of marching them around the field, and he got them in very good positions, obviously, with his kicking game and, his control and his level head, that sort of thing. So it will take a bit of time for those 2 young halves to sort things out. There will be occasions, there will be matches where Huddo Young does go off and score some big points, but through 2 games, no tries, no line breaks, no line break assists, just the 5 tackle breaks and 3 offloads. Those are some numbers you really don't attribute to Huddo Young there. So obviously not getting the same amount of ball and the same amount of quality ball. So, yeah, until things change, we're pretty blessed with both middles and edge back rowers. He's quite some distance from the starting team at the moment, I think.
Yeah, fair enough too, I think. Like you say, we've got so many options that, we haven't really even touched on Kai Pearce-Paul and his dominance that he had the other day. But one player that we're really not keen on as well is Angus Crichton. He's really just sort of a passenger in that Roosters side. Obviously, the Roosters have had some up and down games, but he's only averaging 36 or almost 37 GDS points, and that includes a try from Angus Crichton. So it's a little bit concerning for me. I guess the Roosters probably haven't quite got their halves combination sorted yet. We've sort of seen Walker in the preseason stand up and take a bit of lead, and then we've seen DCE sort of take that lead back to an extent as well, and they've had a pretty up and down start. So for me, Angus is someone that I'm not keen on playing, and he's just going to sit by the wayside, particularly this week up against the Panthers, that they're allowing very little points to edges, in particular on that left side. So I think it's just a watch and wait again. If the Roosters start to find some form and they start to get better, I think that's when Crichton's probably going to step it up a little bit. But at the moment, it's pretty much all the Roosters this week anyway. For me, they're probably going to be in that stay away column.
If we thought Huddo Young's numbers were poor, Angus Crichton, 2 tackle breaks, 1 offload. He's given away 3 penalties, made 3 errors. Doesn't make for pretty reading. You want these guys minimising the errors and penalties. You want them breaking plenty of tackles. He's just not doing it at the moment. Yeah,
that's right. Exactly. And look, Fantasy Stats has come in and said, if Capewell plays, then obviously Halasima's fantasy potential is going to be down. It's just going to be a matter of is Capewell going to be fit enough to make that side? Look, I don't think he's actually in that the 21 or whatever they've named at the moment. So they're giving him at least a week to get himself sorted. But that, I think it was a hammy that he ended up doing. It could be a longer term injury as well. So at least for the meantime, I think Halasima is potentially going to have that fantasy output.
Yeah, I think a calf injury, probably expect 3 to 4 weeks. He's a bit older as well, so maybe the rehab takes a little bit longer as well. I think if you're keen on Lecker, he should be getting through a decent amount of minutes until the return of Capewell.
Yeah, and look, from a spectator's perspective, a fan of the Warriors, I think I'd much prefer Lecker playing in that position over Capewell. I think Capewell's good. He's got some great defense, but yeah, you're right. He's on the sort of the wrong side of that sort of age bracket where we see some peak in players, and Lecker's obviously a young bloke that's really keen and hungry. Just quickly, Luke Skipper's jumped in and he's asked Wong for the under 24s though this week. So we haven't really talked about under 24s. Wong is probably one of those players that is going to be first picked most weeks if he's named to start for me in the under 24s. If he's coming off the bench, then maybe not. We're just not sure about that rotation. Obviously, the under 24s, we've got less options to choose from. So that means Wong and a few other players potentially that are coming up against these harder matchups, they're probably still going to get a run for me. Is that sort of similar with your thinking as well, Stu?
Yeah, limited options. I'd even say that Wong would be above Angus Crichton in a regular full weekend competition. Anyway, he's not outscoring him by too much, but looking a little bit better and getting through a bit more work than Crichton. So that just says a lot. I think more about Angus Crichton than it does Sua Wong. But yeah, limited options in the under 24 competition. As long as he's on the edge there, looking for big minutes, despite the Penrith matchup, hopefully still gets through plenty of work. But if you can find a couple of extra guys that you think are going to go off, then he wouldn't be the worst guy to leave out with the tough matchup.
Yeah. And I think Angus is just getting his reps in for rugby, starting at where does he start at the end of the season or the beginning of next season, the rugby union contract. So he's obviously, on his way out. So yeah, maybe he's got his one eye on that, 1 foot out the door. Alrighty, let's jump into the halves. And look, the first man picked in my team this week, finally, my boo, Nico Hines, doesn't have a tough matchup, or not as tough as he did last week. We obviously faded him with that tough matchup against the Panthers. And look, that was a good call. He got 38 GDS points, which, it's kind of probably expected the way that the Panthers are defending and playing at the moment. They're playing some unreal footy. It's a very stark contrast to last season where we saw the Panthers struggling early in the season. He now comes up against Nico Hines. That is probably a favourable matchup up against the Dolphins. We've sort of seen the Dolphins have some ups and some downs. They obviously put on a second half performance against the Titans on Sunday. But look, halves against the Dolphins so far haven't been outstanding. If you take away that Cody Walker 54-point effort from round one, we're there's not a lot to look at, but they probably haven't had the expertise, the knowledge, the silky smooth hands and hair of Nico Hines coming up against them. So for me, I think he's just going to put on a clinic similar to what he did against the Titans. As I said, the Titans almost touched up the Dolphins, really. So I think that's going to be one up for the Sharks and for Nico Hines. I expect the Sharks to probably take a lot out of the game against the Panthers and then probably exact some revenge as well on that iffy defense. We've seen plenty of times that Dolphins defense is just not quite up to scratch yet. They're obviously attacking quite well, and that's where they're sort of getting involved in games. Their defense is letting them down a lot. Even if Hines is not going to score multiple tries each week like he did against the Titans, but against the Finns, he's going to run the ball a little bit more. He's probably going to increase his tackle break tally a little bit more as well, so that we're going to get plenty of base and power stats from him, and then any attacking stats on top of that we haven't really seen too much from Hines so far in terms of try assists, etc. I think that's just going to add some gold there. So I think Nico Hines is one of those players that you really got to consider this week based on that matchup.
When you said the first man picked, I was sure you were going to go to Tanner Boyd. The question for me is, can this run of points continue? 2 tries, 12 goals, 4 try assists inside the first 2 weeks of footy. He sits atop the average points for all halves, second in averages for the entire competition behind Adam Dewey's massive 94 in his first game after the bye. Look, the Warriors do travel. They don't travel that well, but they do get the injury-depleted Knights who won't have KP or Dill Brown in their 17. First of all, where has this come from? And can the run of form continue to the point where we still play him in our GDS teams for at least another week?
I have no idea where this form's come from. Look, I was sitting there in game one about to, be disappointed in the way that the Warriors matched up against the Roosters. I was ready for us to get absolutely rolled. Looking at the team on paper, going DC and Emmy Walker, two of the best halves in the competition, up against Tanner Boyd and CHT. It looked horrible. It looked gross on paper. And Tanner Boyd looks like he is an absolute star. He's been in everything. He's been involved in every element of that Warriors team so far. The question marks around it, though, for me is he's now lost his halves partner in CHT. He's got either Hansen or potentially Jet Cleary, which I know a lot of Warriors fans are super keen to see. Jet Cleary's been playing some unreal footy in the lower grades, so I'd love to see him get a call up. So I just want to see how that goes. Obviously, that partnership's going to be really interesting. It doesn't mean that Tanner Boyd takes on even more responsibility as well for the Warriors, probably. He's probably going to have more kicking meters. He's probably going to get a few more touches and get his hands on the ball a little bit more. So can he translate into GDS points? Potentially. I think there's a really good opportunity for him based on what we've seen. The Knights are averaging about 44 GDS points so far to those left side halves. So if we see Tanner Boyd down that left side, I think that there's going to be some opportunity there for him, especially with a few Knights out. But then the question mark as well over the Knights team is as Tracy Wall pointed out, it's going to be Fletcher Sharp. He returns from that injury probably earlier than expected, maybe slightly. I know they said sort of 2 to 3 weeks, but it looked probably worse than what it was maybe. But he's done quite well to get back. Is Fletcher Sharp someone that you're pretty keen on up against Tanner Boyd, up against the Warriors?
I don't know. Does he come back this soon if KP and Dill Brown are good to go? I'm not so sure. Is it a matter of they're already down these two? They can't afford to be down. They're arguably one of their top three best players as it is in Fletcher Sharp. So I'm a bit hesitant there. The fact that we've got three really good options in those guys we've mentioned, provided Tanner Boyd can get things going again after the form he's in. I don't know if I'm going to be able to plug Sharp into too many sides. Obviously very talented, and what he showed in round one in the 28 minutes that he was on the field was breathtaking. You're right, though. The amount of pain he looked like he was in almost looks like it was season ending. So great to see him back so soon. You just, these things can happen again pretty frequently, particularly if, he's a bit touch and go, maybe not fully fit, but, says, no, I'm good to go, put me in. And we're down a few blokes, so we need to keep the form rolling, that sort of thing. So, look, if we're on a shortened week without too many decent options, I think, absolutely I would. But because we've got plenty of decent options, I don't know if I need to jump in and take that risk. But look, I can't really blame anyone that does, and I'm probably going to be, licking my wounds, eat my words when he has a massive game. But probably that risk I'm not willing to take this soon.
Yeah, and as Tracy points out there in the comments as well, I think he's a definite for the under-24s competition. I think
absolutely.
You've definitely got to play him there. It's just that the full round in terms of having all players minus the Sea Eagles available, I think there's probably some better options there, but it's definitely someone to keep an eye on. Obviously, Nathan Cleary is going to be one of those players that we strongly consider each and every week. We don't probably need to analyse what he does. He just, scores GDS points for fun. So we've got those three strongly considered. There's one point, a different player there that's really interesting. It's Jaden Campbell. He's been named on the extended bench. And the difficult thing is that they play in the last game of the round. Are you going to take the risk on putting him in your side in the hopes that he comes in with probably not many other options outside of that to change into? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I wish he was named in the number 7 jersey. I mean, because we can be pretty flexible and make some changes throughout the weekend, I'm hoping that that 24-hour announcement sort of early Saturday or maybe, early evening Saturday at least might give us some certainty around whether he is moved straight into that starting halfback role or still on the extended bench. If there is some flexibility and I can still make some moves around, I'll try to get him into a team. I don't think I can put too much faith in him and put him in all of my teams, even though, last year when he was fit, he was just about a must play alongside Cleary just about every week, averaged 64 points and, was, impressive, even if the Titans weren't winning football matches. They're not going to win too many again this season, but he just has that game to rack up an incredible amount of fantasy points. at such a decent clip. So no, I don't know. The only real pivot option, if I do have him stuck into my team, will be one of the Cowboys halves. And Tommy Dearden and Jake Clifford, not the worst plays, but both sort of averaging that low. Clifford might kick a few extra goals there against the Titans, but that's the real risk, isn't it? If you do have him in there and you don't have anyone to pivot to. So I'm hoping we get some word 24 hours out, and that might make a decision easier. But so much upside for Campbell. To summarise all of that, maybe in one team, just because he does bring a bit of upside. If other coaches have their 3 half spots already locked in, he becomes a super point of difference given how good he can be.
Yeah. And as you said, the tough thing is then only having those pivot options of the Cowboys. I think for me at the moment, JC's locked into my Sunday showdown until we hear anything otherwise. And then, as you said, my alarm's set for 24 hours before their kickoff time. So Saturday afternoon, evening, to find out whether we get him into the starting side then and there. And then we can make some more effective decisions with a bit more information. Look, with a couple of stayaways in Adam Reynolds and Sam Walker. Adam Reynolds, for me, I'm not going near him. I don't want to touch him. He had a massive game last week, but the week before he had 4 GDS points. So I really don't want to touch him. But Sam Walker's the interesting one. We talked him up quite a bit off season, and he just hasn't quite delivered yet. He's averaging 33 GDS points. That includes an average of 12 points in goals from goal kicking. We know that we get 3 points per goal. So he's really not being involved in the game at all based on the stats that are talking about, particularly in terms of base and power. We're really not seeing that from him. And then the attacking stats in terms of try assists, etc., we're definitely not seeing it from him at all. DCE outscored him last week, and then they scored sort of 20 each the week before. So for me, the matchup as well against the Panthers, allowing 21 GDS points to right halves so far this season, I think that's just a line straight through Sammy Walker until he can see some form, and we can see that on paper, and we get some of that decent base that we know that we can get from Sam Walker.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The matchup alone is enough reason to put a line through him. We did that for Nicho Hines last week. Rinse and repeat there for Sammy Walker. He does get the Manly Sea Eagles next week. So this time next Wednesday, we'll be having a much different conversation, I think, about Sammy Walker, given how poor the Manly Sea Eagles have been. And he may be a guy that we look towards with a little bit of upside there. But look, Adam Reynolds might not even take the field. I think he's all but been ruled out of that match. If he hasn't already been ruled out, I think he's unable to overcome that rib pain from last match. So yeah, I think he won't be taking the field. But even if he does, regardless, that inconsistent scoring and up against the Melbourne Storm, definitely a big no-no for me.
No, definitely not. Just quickly before we move on to the centres, I can't remember if we've said this or you've said this on the podcast or not, mate, but I know that you're pretty keen on the Seagulls to run the wooden spoon this year. So I just wanted to point that out on stream if we haven't already done so. And we like to keep track of how they're going. Look, they're not looking great at all. And it looks like that they're probably going to be battling the Titans for that wooden spoon, potentially the way they're going at the moment. So, yeah, I think they're going to be one of those teams that we sort of target week in, week out as well. Just quickly, we've got Fantasy Stats who's asked about Daly Cherry Evans this week instead of Sam Walker. I think it's the same conversation, really. I think the matchup against the Panthers is just going to be too much for a lot of teams. And I think that the Panthers have found this way to just shut down the halves, and therefore a lot of that attack that stems from the halves, it just doesn't happen. And there's a lot of pressure put on the halves, and therefore there's not a lot of attacking outside of that. And that's where a lot of these guys get some of their key stats is through those attacking stats. So yeah, for me, DCE is another no-go for me. But Stu, I think you're probably in the same boat there.
Yep, no go for me.
All righty, let's move into the centres. And look, I'm going to give you all of the limelight here to gloat about your call of Adam Dewey and why he's not only was he a great pod last week, but he's going to be one of those key players that we play pretty much each and every week moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's just that out of position value that he brings to GameDay Squad. We can obviously play him in the centre position, but he's wearing the number 7 on his back. And look, him and Jerome Luai were incredible with the Tigers in their first match coming off that bye. Obviously, the Cowboys, were pretty poor and have been pretty poor for some time now. And and the Tigers just ran rings around them. So I think the fact that the Tigers hadn't played a match yet, he wasn't really, on people's minds because he wasn't on the averages list. I think he would have been missed by a number of coaches, and definitely very happy to have his 94 points. Obviously, I didn't win the competition, meaning a number of other coaches did play Adam Dewey as well. But if coaches didn't play him last week, I think they'll be kicking themselves, and he'll definitely be in their sides now. Not saying he's going to score a try or kick 7 or 8 goals every single round. That's not what we need from him. But just because he provides so much floor in terms of his kicking meters, he does get the ball in his hands so frequently close to the line. He's that big-bodied half as well that doesn't mind taking the line on. He's got a really good short kicking game as well, close to the line. Even if he was an out-and-out halfback in GameDay Squad, there'll be plenty of matches where you'd want to play him in your halves anyway. Look, the matchup isn't amazing, isn't terrible this round, but since we can play him in the centre position, where we've already seen, blokes like Kale Iro really struggle, even in what seems like really plus matchups on paper, particularly round 1 with a score in the 20s. I think Adam Dewey alongside Herbie Farnworth just provides so much safety, and really it just means move on to the next position when you're picking your team, because you've got 2 guys there that are going to get you through just about every week that they're named.
And I think the other thing that sort of points out for me is that those 2 blokes are going to be salary pods. That whereas, if you're in those sort of contender or classic competitions and you're not sure where to put that additional salary, put it on these 2 guys where they're probably going to be played in combination every week that they're available now, based on what we've seen so far. So there's plenty of opportunity to load up that salary and get that little bit of advantage over your competition because you've played the gold, whereas they've played the silver or the bronze. So everyone's, I'd say majority of people are going to be going that way, similar to Sif Kanga, who said he's going to be going that way of Dewey and Farnsey, and then that Kale Iro shout. Look, mate, sitting on 25 GDS points on average. We were talking about him as one of the elite potential centres in the game, and that sort of just completely disappeared. Is that a result of Muatalo not being there, Stone Street, that combination not quite clicking? Jesse Ramian seems to be more involved than what he has been. They seem to be going that side of the field as well. Or is it just that Kale Iro needs to try to be able to score some GDS points?
Oh, yeah, maybe a bit of both. I think what's working for them is when they're shifting the ball right, and if something's working, you want to stay there. But look, Kale Iro did score, 8 tries in 8 matches to start the season last year, averaged a really nice 56 GDS points. He's the Sharks and Kale Iro are too good at football for him to go missing all season long. If he's going to score some points, it's probably this weekend against the Dolphins, who looked pretty poor for about 60 odd minutes there against the Titans, who lost by 50 the week prior. So yeah, look, bit unfortunate if you did play Iro in those first 2 weeks, or you probably didn't play him last week against Panthers anyway, but people will be hurt by the round 1 play against the Titans. I think that means he could even, be listed there at the point of difference, but just because we saw so much stability from him last season, he's not forgotten how to play. It's not like he's gotten old and he's gotten injured. It just hasn't happened yet. So, yeah, I'd consider playing him if you didn't have a Dewey or a Herbie Farnworth card, or you didn't like the matchup for one of them. I think it'll happen eventually. But yeah, Ramian and the right-hand side, they have looked a lot better, haven't they? So if you want to go him as a point of difference over him, that's why we've got him listed there at the point of difference, alongside your man, Val Holmes.
My man, Val Holmes. Look, I've been critical of Val Holmes probably each and every week for the last year and a half, I think. But it's, it's to his credit, he's working hard, he's trying, but it's just not happening. Those abundance of errors, it's just, he's met those expectations for me, and it's kind of annoying. So far, he's missed a combined 8 tackles, plus he's made 1 error and conceded 1 penalty, and that's in 2 games. That's 31 GDS points that he's lost in demerits. Where, look, if we put all of those together, he didn't have any of those, plus his couple of scores, that 1 decent score that he's had as well. He would be 3rd in total points for centres if he didn't have those demerits lost. So you're obviously losing so much when you play Val Holmes, but there is some upside there. I'm always nervous for that reason if I'm going to roll out the Val, and I guess that's why he's the point of difference rather than someone that we're going to each and every week. He's got a pretty favourable matchup up against the Eels. Through 2 weeks, they've allowed 42 GDS points to right centres. Even if Val doesn't get an attacking stat, I guess the key for us is that the Eels have allowed 84 NRL points to be scored against them. So at least we know Holmes is going to be going up in threes at the very least with his goal kicking. So, I could see the Dragons having putting a bit of a score on the Eels, and maybe the Eels coming back and having a decent score against them as well. So it might be a good time to get on Val Holmes if you think he might be able to hold on to a couple of extra tackles. But if you don't want to get hurt by demerits, then I think you just leave him where he is at the moment and move on and stick with just those two couple of players that we've strongly considered. Alrighty, into our wingers, and there's one player that just stands out being head and shoulders above the rest, and we've talked about him each and every week, and that's Suafailonga. He's just becoming this plug and play player each and every week for the Storm. He's been on fire in his first 2 games. He's averaging 78 GDS points, and that has him ranked first for wingers, and that's absolute daylight between him and the next best as well. He comes up against the defending premiers in the Broncos, and they've struggled. They are not looking like the team that they look like to win that grand final and have that decent run of games in the back end of the season. They've allowed an average of 76 GDS points to fullbacks so far in those first 2 games. Obviously, Dylan Edwards, we expect to have a big game. Iongi was that point of difference that we talked about last week, and he went out and had a massive game against them as well. That 76 average has them ranked first for points allowed to that position at the fullback. So, look, I think for me that the tough thing as well, that the additional hurt is going to be that the Broncos having to travel to Amy Park. The Storm love to put on a big score there at Amy Park. And I think an out of position fullback playing in your wing spot, it's just an easy one for me. And he comes straight into my side in both my regular sides across all competitions, as well as the under 24 side as well.
Yeah, I can't argue with you there. I'm just really interested to know what his fantasy point scores are at the 60-minute mark versus the 80-minute mark. I think he scored a hat-trick in that final sort of 20 or 25 minutes last week to really, get that score up to 90 odd, whatever it was, close to 100. But he also did that in the week prior against the Eels, despite the Storm, being pretty clinical from start to finish. He was fairly quiet until the second half sort of opened up a little bit. But I guess that's the type of player he is when the opposition start to tire a little bit, when they really struggle to move laterally. The footwork that he put on last weekend against the Dragons, even against some of their better backs or more mobile edge back rowers, was just breathtaking. So yeah, he's definitely going to eat apart some of those tired defenses, and maybe we do just have to bide our time, and even if he's on a 20 odd score at halftime or something, you just know that it only takes 1 or 2 plays for him to really skyrocket up those points. But yeah, you're spot on. It's the out of positional play that really makes him an interesting option there. And you were all over Iongi last week. He did score the 2 tries, but I guess that's what happens. The Broncos are leaking points. Those fullbacks are more likely to score some tries. So yeah, if you didn't play for Suafailonga last round, you're definitely playing him this round. And if you played him last round, there's absolutely no reason to jump off him. So such an easy plug and play. The only reason you wouldn't play Failonga is if you didn't have your card, or if you didn't have his card, or if the game got cancelled for some reason.
Yeah, and look, Walkie's here. He's looking for a sewer diamond. So if anyone's got one, go and hit up over on Discord. I'm sure he would be super keen. Now, the question is, we've got 2 really good options in the strongly consider in Sione Katoa up against the Dolphins, and then Jacob Kiraz. Obviously, the Jacob Kiraz one, his average there of 59 is only based on the 1 game he's played so far. But Sione Katoa is probably the interesting one, I think, for me. His average there of 62, and that includes a game against the Panthers. Is that sort of where you're leaning based on that performance last week, that if he can do it against the Panthers, he can do it against this hapless Dolphins defense and put a big score on again?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Jacob Kiraz was the guy that we sort of just pivoted back to whenever we weren't sure about what winger to play last season, just because he gets through plenty of base. He loves to throw an offload, and playing in a Dogs team that are pretty decent in attack means he can fall over the try line every now and then. But yeah, look, the Sharks have shown their hand a little bit, that they are moving right a little bit more frequently. And you're right, a try against the Penrith Panthers when they were outplayed, he still made 9 tackle breaks, and he got 9 tackle breaks in the match in the week earlier there against the Titans. So it's only 2 games, but averaging 9 tackle breaks and 18 points there just for breaking tackles amongst the line breaks, the run meters, and the tries that he is scoring, make him a pretty tempting play alongside that man in Jacob Kiraz tomorrow night. And even Braden Burns, who some coaches might consider. We also saw Fletcher Hunt enter the game late last round, and I think even top score for the Newcastle Knights in that round as well. So finally, we've got some life breathed into the winger position. I'm still not certain. I might just have to play a few of these guys and hope. Are you any closer to picking your second winger?
No, not really. Just looking at the stats for Jacob Kiraz up against the Raiders have been pretty good at defending against wingers on both sides of the park. They're sort of sitting around that 25-ish average for both sides of the park in terms of wingers. So obviously that is one story to tell. Jacob Kiraz is a different beast compared to some of the wingers that have come up against the Raiders so far in terms of the way that he plays, as you said, with that offload. But I think I'm leaning Sione Katoa at the moment, just based on what we've seen from that tackle breaking, from the base and power, and then the way that the Sharks are trying to attack that side of the field rather than the other side, while Ronnie Muatalo is recovering. So for me, I think it's going to be Failongo and Katoa, but mate, I was even looking at Fletcher Hunt, which I don't know if I've ever done before in my life, when I was starting to put my side together on Monday night, thinking, he could be a really good option this week up against the Warriors. The Warriors are travelling. He's going to get plenty of ball. Fletcher Sharp now back as well. Yeah, there's plenty of options this week. I think I'm going to stick with the Failongo Katoa, but like you say, I think there could be some diversifying across a few teams and hope that a few players hit quite well, because some of the stats aren't backing up in terms of Kiraz in particular. That makes me a little bit nervous.
Yeah, well, we do like the Suafa along out of position play, and Fletcher Hunt is the exact same there. Obviously not as talented as a footballer or in as good a side as the Melbourne Storm, but definitely going to get his hands on the footy a lot more frequently. Just quickly, Braden Burns would be a pretty massive pod for a lot of coaches. I think will be very popular on the Sunday Showdown, but in your regular week-long competition, he's already got 15 tackle breaks in 2 matches. If he's going to score a handful of tries at all this season, it's likely going to come in a week like this, where he gets the Titans up there in Townsville. The Titans have been shocking, and if the Cowboys are scoring points, both of their wingers can definitely cash in, but Burns just has the floor with his ability to break tackles. So I'm tipping this maybe be his ceiling game for the year, and he might not replicate a big score if he does get one this weekend. So, yeah, he might be interesting for some people that want to go a bit different to the pack, given that the wing position is always pretty difficult anyway.
Yeah, look, and just circling back to our conversation about Noah Martin that we had earlier, and you mentioned Matt Timoko being on that extended bench. I've just got the 24-hour mail, and they've actually dropped him completely from the side. So Matt Timoko, an international player, has been dropped completely, and they're really keen on that Simi Sasagi in the centre there. So, yeah, it's some interesting news. And will be interesting to keep an eye on how they use Timoko moving forward, because he has had some decent games in the past, and he's that bigger bodied player, and he gets through quite a bit of work. So it'll be really interesting to see. Alrighty, let's jump into the fullbacks, and once again we've got so many options and a few different options as well that we haven't really talked about very much. The first one for me that jumps out is Latrell Mitchell. I think we spent most of the off-season saying, don't touch Latrell Mitchell. He's the opposite of what we would like for an out-of-position player. He's listed as a fullback playing in the centres, but, man, were we wrong. If we're ever being wrong, it's on Latrell Mitchell. He's averaging 69 GDS points, and it seems like after that first sort of mistake that he made in the centres, where we were sitting on the Sunday Showdown and Longy pointed out he went out rather than made that inline, and therefore the intercept happened and the Dolphins scored off that. Since that moment, Latrell, I don't think, has put a foot wrong. He's been unreal in everything he's done. And obviously he had a big part to play in Alex Johnson crossing over for that record-breaking try as well. Is Latrell Mitchell someone that you're just going to put in your team each and every week now, based on what we've seen so far?
No, not necessarily. He's obviously exceeded expectation at the moment, but a big reason that we were sort of off him in the preseason is that he's, stuck there on the left center position, where ideally you want your fullback roaming both sides of the field and being creative down both edges and targeting the side of the field that is the most advantageous for the side. And we haven't really seen Latrell Mitchell move away from that left edge position because, look, he hasn't needed to. I do think that there has been, a lot of discourse around the Alex Johnston record-breaking feat, and now that that's happened, I think that team is going to go back to, their normal structures, things that work, which is obviously going down the left, but there's not going to be that massive, fanfare around him finding the try line. So Latrell Mitchell might not have in the back of his mind that he's got to get every ball out to AJ. It just might be a slightly different mindset for Latrell, whether that's a positive to his game or a negative or has no bearing whatsoever. I'm not sure, but we do know that all of that narrative around Alex Johnson's record-breaking feat is now over. It's in the past. So things might look a little bit different there at the Bunnies. I'll play Latrell Mitchell when the matchup suits. It's good this week. And he doesn't need to do a lot to get that big fantasy score. There will be occasions where we are disappointed with his scores, given he is down that one channel. And if the Bunnies don't score tries, he's not kicking goals. So I think if you are someone that plays Latrell Mitchell week in, week out, you've just got to know that the floor won't always be there, and he's not always going to average 69. So the signs have been good, but there will be weeks where he comes back down to earth. It just depends, can you pick it or not?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the key, is can you pick it, because there are going to be times where he's not going to have a big game. Look, Iongi on screen as well, strongly consider. He's moved from a potential point of difference into a strongly consider, and I think it's all just down to the matchup for me. We obviously saw him have a positive matchup against the Broncos last week. He's now up against the St. George Illawarra Dragons, and they're allowing 69 GDS points so far to fullbacks. So I think for me, there's just an opportunity there for them to score. Both teams like to put on points, and there's opportunities there for Iongi. Look, there's been a couple of comments, so let's get to some comments. Obviously, we can see a few different players on screen. The one comment that seems to be coming up is Reece Walsh. Boney here, Boney JB says, could Walsh be a pod since Reynolds is a maybe? You touched on Reynolds potentially being out earlier. Does that mean that we see Walsh from the last 5 games of 2025, where he averaged over 100 GDS points across those 5 games, including 2 of those being in the finals?
Oh, I'd love to say yes. I don't think we'll see that version of Reece Walsh just yet. Obviously, there was a lot to play for the Brisbane Broncos. They were effectively, must-win matches, and a number of them went sort of overtime as well and were nail-biters. So I don't think we'll see that version of Reece Walsh, but no Adam Reynolds, which I think is all but confirmed now. That's a massive tick in the play Reece Walsh camp, and I think I will get there, John Boney, in a number of my teams, just because of the upside that we have seen in the past with no Adam Reynolds there and Ben Hunt effectively playing in that number 7 role. He knows how to get Reece Walsh involved, and it's no coincidence that we've seen Walsh's biggest scores with Hunt in the side and not Adam Reynolds. It also does mean that if the Broncos do manage to score some points, they obviously went down last week again, but still were able to score plenty of points. If they are scoring tries, if Reece Walsh isn't involved in the scoring of the tries, he'll have the kicking tee and hopefully score some points that way. So, yeah, look, the fantasy point scoring run last year did coincide with the loss of Reynolds. Iongi in round 1 was good against the Melbourne Storm. He scored a 50-plus point score despite not scoring a try himself, and the Parramatta Eels lost by 50. If Iongi could score 50 points in 50 GDS points in that match, I think Reece Walsh could sort of match that, but he's probably got the bigger ceiling. So, yeah, I think that's massive pod territory, if not strongly considered now for me.
Yeah. Look, one of those other points of difference that we have there is Scott Drinkwater, but there's been some conversation around his fitness. And whether he is going to suit up. So I guess there's a bit of an asterisk there. And there's a lot of stats that point to potentially Drinkwater having a big bounce back game. But I think, with that asterisk there, it's going to be a really interesting watch to see whether he does suit up or not. And I guess that's going to be probably something that we consider, particularly because they're obviously one of the last game, or they are the last game of the round, I believe. So it's going to be quite difficult to make any changes. The other option that we're sort of looking at, with the potential of Jaden Campbell back, does that mean Kinney now becomes a really good option, as well as the fact that the Cows are horrible in defence, as Daniel Latini pointed out?
Yeah, absolutely. Great shout there. I think I'd be more confident putting Kinney in one of my fullback spots rather than Campbell, given that there is some uncertainty around his whether he'll take a start in the match or not. But even if you run a Drinkwater and Drinkwater is ruled out, which I think the word is that we might see Purdue move back to the fullback role, which opens up another conversation for him. But we don't have enough time for that. But that will be pretty exciting, at least for your Sunday showdown. Look, if Drinkwater doesn't take the field on that Sunday afternoon, then it's really easy to pivot there across to Kinney. But look, if Jaden Campbell is named, I think that gives me more reason to put him and Kinney into the side, which means I'll be really flexible this weekend. And I think just like the Adam Dewey from last weekend, if you want to find a couple of players with some massive upside that not a lot of people will be on until they have their massive score, it's probably these two blokes this weekend against the Cowboys. For all we know, it could be 38-34, or it could be a really dour affair like last Sunday evening where it was super boring and I think I struggled to stay awake. Luckily, it was the later game, and I got to bed nice and early there on the Sunday night. Let's hope there are a few more points up there in Townsville. But yeah, if Kinney or Jaden Campbell or both were in my side come Sunday Arvo, and my main side I'm talking about here, not just my Sunday showdown, then I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, look, I'm going to talk about one more player really quickly because we need to jump off very soon because the AFL show is jumping onto the back of this and they'll be on very soon as well. So if you're really keen, make sure you stick around. Plenty of Fantasy Bros to go around. Look, James Tedesco is a player that we've actually got on the stay away list. And look, he is one man that I'm definitely staying away from this week. And look, obviously we've already talked about plenty of Roosters up against the Panthers and why we're not going near them. But look, I said last week stats don't really matter for Tedesco. However, I think there's one exception, and that's up against the Panthers. I just think it's just better just not to play any player up against the Panthers. So far, they've decimated the defending premiers and then shredded the Sharkies as well. In both games, they restricted the opposition fullback to less than 25 GDS points. And after 2 games, that's the best defense in the competition against fullbacks so far this season. Obviously, smaller sample size, some decent fullbacks in that lot as well. But I just find it very difficult to see James Tedesco having a big game that we are used to seeing. The Roosters obviously are improving as well. That he had a try, but he failed to crack 50 GDS points. So it's pretty disappointing there from Teddy. If we get a try from him, it's sort of in the 90s usually. But that was still, that was good enough for the 6th best score from fullbacks in round 2. So it was sort of a lower scoring affair there. So between the fact that the roller coaster Roosters are just not quite there yet, and then the unreal defense of the Panthers that we've talked about, I'm pretty keen to just avoid Teddy completely. Look, and just quickly, I'll get to one comment. Skip asking about Walsh. We've covered him, so we definitely are pretty keen on Walsh now that Reynolds is out. But if you want some more analysis, make sure you go back and rewatch what Stu was talking about. Alrighty, let's jump into our consensus starting 13. So again, something a little bit different. These are the blokes that we're looking at playing in the start position. So we've got our forwards there. We've got Payne Haas, Terrell May, and Harry Grant. And then we've got Dill Lucas, Preston, and Stefano Udukamanu. In our halves, we've got Cleary and Hines. In our centre spot, we've got Herbie Farnworth and Adam Dewey. And then our wingers are Failongo and Carraz. And then we've got Latrell Mitchell at the moment as our consensus starting. But I think if we get some news and Reynolds is ruled out, then I think Reece Walsh might find his way into that consensus spot there. Alrighty, on to BroDown ShowDown. And once again, I went down. It was very close. Failongo obviously put on a big score, but then Payne Haas just dominated, and Terrell May in his first game back just couldn't get it done. So Stu took the lead there in 2-1. That also means that he's taken the lead 2-1 for the whole season. Now, if you want to get involved in BroDown ShowDown, it's very simple. We are going to show you our tips for this week, and then all you need to do is comment on who you think is going to win the BroDown ShowDown. Similar to what these people did here, we've got plenty of players, plenty of coaches on screen on the wheel this week. Going through them very quickly, we've got Walkies, Roshni, Matt P, Ganners, Coach Stephen Mian, John Boney, Mel's Misfits, Tracy Wall, and Skipper, all on this wheel. So let's spin this wheel, and they're going to win a 3-player rare pack. Here we go. Good luck, everyone involved. And there we are. It is Skipper. Congratulations.
Good on you, Skipper. Well done.
Let's jump across. As I said, we've got the 3-player rare pack here. Hopefully we can get to it quickly. I might need to refresh because it's not liking what I'm doing. Apologies. Let's refresh here. And as I said, really easy to get involved. If you want to win some packs, all you need to do is comment on the bro that you think is going to win the BroDown Showdown. Each week, we spin the wheel off screen to determine the position that we are picking from. And then we pick out for the week based on who we think is going to score the most. Alrighty, Luke, Skip, here we go. We've got a gold Allay. We've got Volkman and we've got Hamlin Ueli in plat. Not a great pack for you, unfortunately. We might need to see if we can get Skip something a bit better than that. What do you think, Stu?
Oh, I think Skip's got enough cards. He might want to donate them to someone else in the chat, maybe. No, we'll sort him out.
Definitely.
Hit us up in the DM,
We'll
Skip.
sort you out for sure, Skip. We want to get everyone involved. Alrighty, this week for the BroDown Showdown, if you are keen on Stu's pick of Dewey, Cleary and Katoa, running over the top of my picks of Herbie Farnworth, Hines and Filongo, all you need to do is comment Stu. If you think I am going to nail the picks this week, all you need to comment is Dill. Make sure you keep those comments rolling through as well. If you're watching the replay or listening on Spotify or Apple, you can still comment as well to make sure that you get involved and you can get your name on that wheel and potentially we can win some better cards for you than what we've got there. But no, look, trust us. Trust the bros. We'll also always try and sort you out with some better cards if we don't have anything great. So Luke, Skip, you'll be getting something better. Alrighty, that is it. Thank you everyone for joining us. We're bang on 7:15, just in time for the AFL boys to kick off. Make sure you're joining us Wednesday and Sundays for Fantasy Bros. Wednesday night, 6 p.m. The live show, round 4, next Wednesday. Have a great night. Thank you very much. My son is going crazy. Stu, I'll see you later.
Thanks, Dyl. Thanks everyone for joining us once again. Catch us Sunday for the Sunday Showdown.
Have a good one.